The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and roasted turkey, a fragrance that had always meant family to me. Steam rose from the potatoes as I mashed them, my hands working from 67 years of muscle memory. From the dining room came laughter, my granddaughter Lily's infectious giggle rising above the Christmas music. For a moment, everything felt perfect. "Mom, are you almost done in there? Victoria's getting antsy about serving." I looked up to see Marcus leaning against the doorframe of his designer kitchen. My son tall like his father with the same strong jaw and piercing blue eyes that could either warm your heart or freeze it, depending on his mood. Tonight there was a tightness around his mouth I couldn't quite read. "Almost ready," I replied, keeping my voice light. "Just finishing the gravy. You can't rush perfection." He didn't smile. "Victoria spent all day on the turkey. She doesn't want it getting cold." What he meant was Victoria doesn't want you taking over her kitchen, even though I'd only arrived 3 hours ago specifically at her request to help with the sides. I wiped my hands on the apron I'd brought from home, the one embroidered with Boston Heritage Bakery, across the front, and nodded. "Of course. It's her house after all." Something flashed across Marcus's face. Irritation, guilt. Before I could decipher it, he was gone, footsteps quick against the Italian marble floors of the Newton Colonial I'd helped them buy 5 years ago. That was the thing about Marcus. Even at 42, he could still slip away from conversations like the teenager who used to avoid curfew discussions. Some habits never change, even when everything else does. I poured the gravy into the porcelain boat that had once belonged to my mother. Another family heirloom I'd passed down along with the recipe for the perfect Christmas dinner. Victoria had wanted to serve the gravy in a minimalist white ceramic pitcher that matched her aesthetic. I'd insisted on tradition, one of our many silent battles tonight. "Grandma, are you coming? Mom says we can't eat until everyone's seated." Lily appeared in the doorway, her 8-year-old frame practically vibrating with Christmas excitement. Her red velvet dress matched the ribbons in her dark hair, Victoria's careful styling evident in every perfect curl. "I'm right behind you, sweetheart," I said, lifting the gravy boat. "Lead the way." She grabbed my free hand, her small fingers warm against mine, and pulled me toward the dining room. The table was set with Victoria's trademark precision crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier, name cards in calligraphy marking each place. Everything magazine perfect, like a Christmas spread in Architectural Digest. Marcus sat at the head of the table, already pouring red wine into Victoria's glass. My daughter-in-law nodded a tight acknowledgement as I entered. At 40, Victoria Tompkins Thompson, she'd insisted on keeping her maiden name hyphenated, still maintained the polished beauty that had first caught Marcus's eye at a charity gala 12 years ago. Her chestnut hair fell in a sleek bob, not a strand out of place despite hours of cooking. Her cream cashmere sweater probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Finally," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We thought the gravy might have gotten lost on its way to the table." I returned her smile with equal insincerity. "Just making sure it was perfect. It's not Christmas without proper gravy." Lily climbed into her seat, immediately reaching for a dinner roll. Victoria's hand shot out, stopping her. "Grace first, Lily. You know the rules." Marcus cleared his throat. "I'll say grace tonight." We bowed our heads as he recited a quick, rehearsed blessing that thanked God for family and prosperity. The same words Robert, my late husband, used to say, though, when Robert said them, they carried the weight of genuine gratitude. When Marcus said them, they felt like checking a box. The first few minutes passed in the careful choreography of passing dishes. Victoria commented on the moistness of the turkey. I complimented her cranberry sauce. Lily talked about the presents she hoped Santa would bring. Normal family dinner conversations skating on the thin ice of politeness that had defined our relationship since Victoria entered our lives. "So, Mom," Marcus said after his second glass of wine, "how's the condo? Any more issues with the heating?" "It's fine," I replied, cutting a small piece of turkey. "The building manager finally fixed it last week." "You know," Victoria interjected, "that building is getting quite dated. Have you considered something newer? There's a lovely senior living community in Brookline that several of my clients' parents have moved into." I set down my fork with deliberate care. "I'm hardly ready for senior living, Victoria. My condo suits me just fine." "I just meant something with better amenities and less maintenance. You're not getting any younger." Marcus shot his wife a warning look that she pretended not to see. "I'm 67, not 97, I said, and I've managed the bakery for 40 years. I think I can handle a condo." "The bakery you sold 3 years ago," Victoria pointed out, her voice sweet, but her eyes sharp. Retirement is a big adjustment. We just want you to be comfortable. What she meant was, we don't want to worry about you becoming a burden. The subtext wasn't lost on me. Actually, I said, reaching for my water glass, I've been thinking of making some changes. Not to where I live, but to what I'm doing. Marcus looked up, interest piqued. What kind of changes? I'm considering reopening Boston Heritage, just on a smaller scale. A boutique bakery focusing on specialty items rather than volume. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with the carving knife still resting beside the turkey. Victoria recovered first. But you sold the business. The brand, the recipes, everything. I sold the main location and business operations, I corrected. I retained rights to the name and recipes for any future ventures. It was in the contract. I made sure of it. Marcus set his wine glass down hard enough that ruby liquid sloshed dangerously close to the rim. That doesn't make any sense, Mom. You're retired. You should be enjoying your golden years, not starting over. Baking is what I enjoy, I said simply. And frankly, I miss it. You sold the bakery because it was too much work, he pressed. You said so yourself. I sold it because your father had just died and running it alone was too much at that time, I corrected gently. But that was 3 years ago. I've had time to grieve and reflect. I'm ready for a new chapter. Victoria's laugh was like glass breaking. A new chapter at your age. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, but kept my voice level. Age is just a number, Victoria. I have plenty of energy and experience. What about money? Marcus asked, business instinct taking over. Starting a new bakery would require significant capital. I've got savings, I said. And the sale of the original bakery left me comfortable. Plus, I still own the small storefront on Charles Street. It's been leased out, but the tenant's contract is up in February. Marcus's expression darkened. The one in Beacon Hill, that's prime real estate. You should be selling it, not using it for a retirement hobby. It's not a hobby, I said, feeling the first stirrings of real anger. It's my life's work. Your father and I built that business from nothing. And you sold it, he repeated as if I might have forgotten. For a very good price, I might add, since I negotiated the deal. You advised on the deal, I corrected. Sarah Goldstein was my attorney. And I'm the one who told you to hire Sarah, he countered. If it weren't for my connections, Marcus, Victoria cut in smoothly. Your mother has made up her mind, but perhaps instead of reopening, you might consider other investments. She turned to me. Real estate in Boston is booming. That storefront could easily sell for it's not for sale. I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. Lily, who had been quietly eating her dinner during this exchange, looked up. I think it would be awesome if Grandma made cookies again. Her gingerbread men are way better than the ones from the store. Victoria's smile tightened. Lily, adults are talking about business matters. It's okay, I said, reaching over to squeeze Lily's hand. And thank you, sweetheart. Maybe you can help me in the kitchen when I reopen. Absolutely not, Victoria said quickly. Lily has ballet on Mondays and Wednesdays, piano on Tuesdays, swimming on Thursdays, and junior achievement on Fridays. Her schedule is already full. Heaven forbid she have any free time to just be a child, I murmured. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. Nothing, I said, returning to my dinner. Just thinking out loud. Marcus had been watching this exchange, his expression growing darker with each word. Mom, why are you doing this now? Is it because of the house? I looked at him confused. What house? This house? He said, gesturing around. Ever since we remodeled the kitchen, you've been making comments. Is this bakery idea some kind of, I don't know, way to prove something? Prove what? I asked, genuinely perplexed. That you're still relevant. That we still need your input. I set my napkin down beside my plate, appetite gone. I don't need to prove anything, Marcus. Especially not to you or Victoria. Then why now? He pressed. Why not a year ago? Or 2 years ago? Why right when we're finally getting everything settled? I looked around the table at my son's flushed face, at Victoria's calculated neutrality, at Lily's growing discomfort. I'm not sure what you're implying, but my decision has nothing to do with you. It's about what I want for my life. What about what we want? Marcus demanded, his voice rising. Have you ever considered that ever since Dad died, it's been all about you, your grief, your needs, your decisions? Marcus, Victoria murmured, placing a warning hand on his arm. Not now. He shrugged her off. No, it needs to be said. We've been walking on eggshells around her for 3 years. Everything we do is wrong. The way we're raising Lily, the renovations to the house, my career choices, nothing is good enough. I've never said anything about your career, I objected. You didn't have to, he snapped. The disapproving looks every time I mention a new investment are quite enough. If you're referring to those cryptocurrency ventures that lost money last year, then yes, I had concerns. Your father always taught you to be careful with— Don't. Marcus's voice cut like a blade. Don't you dare bring Dad into this. You don't get to weaponize him. I wasn't— Yes, you were, he insisted. You always do. Your father would be disappointed. Your father worked so hard. Your father never would have approved. I'm sick of it. Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. Marcus, please. Lily is right here. But something had broken loose in my son, something that had clearly been simmering beneath the surface for months, maybe years. You know what I've built something here, he continued, gesturing around the immaculate dining room. A successful career, a beautiful home, a family, and all you can do is criticize and interfere. The constant calls, the drop-by visits, the opinions about how we're raising Lily. I have never criticized how you're raising Lily, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. I've only tried to help. Help, Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that made Lily flinch. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels a lot like judgment. That's unfair, I said. I've always supported you even when I didn't agree with your choices. Supported? He was almost shouting now. You call it support when you question every decision we make, when you make Victoria feel like she's not good enough, when you act like this house, which, may I remind you, we pay the mortgage on, still belongs to you because you helped with the down payment. Marcus, that's enough, Victoria said, her voice sharp with genuine concern now. But it was too late. Something had snapped in my son, and all the buried resentment was pouring out like a broken dam. You want to know the truth, Mom? Sometimes I wish— He stopped breathing hard, a muscle jumping in his jaw. Wish what? I asked quietly, though part of me already knew the answer. He looked up, his eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. Then he slammed his hand down on the table so hard that the wine glasses jumped, and Lily gasped. I wish you weren't here. The words exploded from him. I wish you would just disappear from our lives. Everything was fine until you decided to insert yourself back in. We don't need your money. We don't need your advice. And we certainly don't need you judging every aspect of our lives. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Christmas music had reached the end of the playlist. No one moved. Lily's eyes had filled with tears. Victoria stared down at her plate. Marcus's chest heaved with emotion, his face flushed. I looked at my son, still holding my fork. The turkey had gone cold on my plate. The gravy congealed. Outside, snow had begun to fall, soft white flakes drifting past the windows. Say that again, I said, my voice calm despite the earthquake happening inside me. Marcus leaned forward, his face hard. You heard me. You ruin every holiday with your judgment and your rules. You treat this house like it's still yours. It's not. You're not welcome here anymore. I set my fork down carefully beside my plate. I see. Mom, Victoria started, apparently sensing that a line had been irrevocably crossed. He doesn't mean yes, Marcus interrupted. I do mean it. I folded my napkin and placed it beside my half-eaten meal. Well then, I said, Merry Christmas, Marcus. Wish granted. Lily blinked, her small face confused and frightened. Victoria looked up, uncertain if she'd heard me correctly. Marcus's jaw tightened, the kind of tightness that comes when someone realizes their attack didn't land as expected. I stood my chair, scraping against the hardwood floor, every movement slow, measured, precise. Control has a sound. It's quieter than anger, colder than silence. You don't have to see me again, I told him, my voice steady. But you will remember this meal for the rest of your life. He laughed, short and bitter. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, straightening my napkin one last time. You just made sure this will be your last Christmas in this house. Victoria gasped. Jessica, please. He didn't mean— I looked at her just once. You've had 10 years to teach him manners, Victoria. You failed. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She reached for Marcus's arm. He shrugged her off. He thought he'd won. He thought his outburst had ended something. He didn't realize it had only just begun. The candles flickered as I pushed my chair back into place, perfectly aligned with the table. The habit of order never leaves you. It's what built my bakery, what raised my children, what kept me standing long after Robert died. Enjoy your meal, I said. Dinner's on me, literally. You're welcome. Then I turned and walked toward the door. Each step echoed across the hardwood floor. Behind me, no one moved. The only sound was the quiet drip of wine from Marcus's overturned glass, staining the white tablecloth like a wound. When I reached the foyer, I picked up my coat. My reflection caught in the mirror by the door, a woman of 67, calm, composed, wearing the face of someone who had just been cut open, but refused to bleed. "Grandma, where are you going?" Lily had followed me, her small face tight with distress. I turned to her and softened my tone. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Grandma's just going to make sure everyone gets exactly what they wished for." She didn't understand. Not yet. But one day she would. Children always learn who tells the truth when the house finally goes quiet. Marcus's voice came from behind me. "You can't just walk out, Mom." I opened the front door. The cold air swept in, swirling through the warmth of the room like a ghost. I didn't look back. "I already did," I said and closed the door behind me. The sky outside was dark velvet, and snow had started to fall soft and soundless, the kind of snow that buries tracks before anyone notices where you went. I stood on the porch, my breath turning white in the air. Inside I could hear them arguing, Victoria whispering frantically, Marcus pacing, Lily crying. The same house that once smelled like cinnamon and sugar from my bakery days now smelled like burnt pride. I walked to my car, parked under the oak tree Robert had planted the year Marcus was born. The irony didn't escape me. He had planted life. His son had just tried to uproot it. I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the falling snow. For a second, I just sat there staring at the house. Every light was still on, every shadow still moving. That was the moment I decided not to cry, not to fight, but to act. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my contact list. Sarah Goldstein, the only person I still trusted to move faster than pain. My thumb hovered over the call button. Not yet, not tonight. Revenge needs precision, not heat. I put the phone down, shifted the car into drive, and whispered to myself, "You wanted peace, Marcus. I'll give it to you in every legal sense of the word." The tires crunched over the snow-dusted driveway as I drove away. The Christmas lights on the porch blurred in my rearview mirror, melting into streaks of red and gold. Somewhere behind those lights sat a son who had just declared war without knowing his opponent had already won. The road stretched ahead, empty and cold. I didn't feel angry. I felt awake, alive. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. It was nearly midnight when I arrived back at my condo in Brookline. The building was quiet, most residents either asleep or away for the holidays. I hung my coat in the closet mechanically, the way you do everyday things when your mind is elsewhere. The apartment felt emptier than usual. Not because it was lacking in furnishings, the space was comfortably filled with the pieces Robert and I had collected over 40 years of marriage, but because I'd returned alone on Christmas Eve. Again, I walked to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. Tea wouldn't fix anything, but the ritual might ground me. While the water heated, I caught my reflection in the window above the sink. The city lights of Boston twinkled beyond a stark contrast to the darkness inside me. "What would you do, Robert?" I whispered to the empty room. My husband had been gone for 3 years, but I still found myself asking him questions. It wasn't that I expected answers. It was more that framing my thoughts as a conversation with him helped clarify my own mind. Robert Thompson had been the calm to my storm, the pragmatist to my dreamer. When we opened Boston Heritage Bakery in 1980, he handled the books while I created the recipes. When Marcus was born 2 years later, Robert was the one who could always get him to sleep, while I was the one who taught him to bake his first cookies. The kettle whistled, jolting me back to the present. I made a cup of chamomile tea and carried it to the small office off the living room. This had been Robert's domain once his desk still occupied the corner by the window, his collection of antique fountain pens displayed on the shelf above. I hadn't changed much after he died, except to add my own desk across from his. It felt right, continuing our partnership, even if one chair remained empty. I set my tea down and opened the bottom drawer of Robert's desk. The manila folder I was looking for sat exactly where I'd placed it 3 years ago after the reading of the will. Inside were the documents that outlined our family trust, the deed to the house in Newton, and the paperwork from the sale of the bakery. I spread them across the desk, the official language of legal documents stark under the lamplight. When Robert died unexpectedly of a heart attack, Marcus had insisted on helping me organize the estate. As our only son and an investment manager by profession, his assistance had seemed logical. I'd been too grief-stricken to question his guidance, too numb to look closely at what he was suggesting. But now, with Marcus's words still ringing in my ears, I wish you weren't here. I examined everything with new eyes. The deed to the Newton house listed me as the sole owner. I had purchased it shortly after selling the bakery, using a significant portion of the proceeds. Marcus and Victoria had been looking for a larger home after Lily was born, and I'd offered to help. The agreement had been simple. I would provide the down payment, and they would take over the mortgage payments. You can pay me back eventually, I'd told them. No rush. At the time, it had seemed like the perfect solution. The house was an investment for me and a step up for them. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly they would come to see it as entirely theirs, how easily they would forget whose name was on the deed. I flipped through more papers until I found the trust documents. Robert had established a family trust years ago with both Marcus and me as trustees. After his death, I had maintained it periodically, checking the statements, but largely leaving the management to the financial advisors Robert had selected. Something nagged at me. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the trust's online portal. The password manager filled in the credentials Robert had set up. The account loaded, showing recent transactions. And there it was. Over the past year, a series of withdrawals had been made, substantial ones. Money moved from the trust to accounts I didn't recognize. The authorizing signature on each transfer, Marcus Thompson. My hand trembled as I scrolled through the records. 10,000 here, 20,000 there. The most recent withdrawal dated just last week, $50,000. I felt like I'd been punched. I knew Marcus had access to the trust as a co-trustee, but these withdrawals had been made without my knowledge or consent. And they weren't for small amounts in total. They added up to nearly $300,000. My mind raced. What had he been using the money for? The renovations to the house, his investments, paying off losses from those cryptocurrency ventures he'd mentioned. I opened another folder, this one containing the bakery sale documents. When I sold Boston Heritage, the final price had been just over $2 million, the culmination of 4 decades of hard work. After taxes and settling business debts, I'd walked away with enough to ensure a comfortable retirement and leave a legacy for Marcus and any future grandchildren. I'd put the down payment on their house, set aside college funds for Lily, and maintained the trust. I'd been generous, perhaps too generous, operating on the assumption that family takes care of family. But as I pieced together the financial trail before me, a disturbing picture emerged. Marcus hadn't just been helping me manage my affairs after Robert's death, he'd been manipulating them. Small changes to the trust's investment strategy, suggestions about which accounts to consolidate, advice on which properties to keep or sell. All of it designed to give him greater access and control. "Oh, Robert," I whispered, "what has our son become?" I reached for my phone and scrolled to Sarah Goldstein's contact. Sarah had been our family attorney for 30 years, handling everything from the bakery contracts to Robert's will. More importantly, she was a friend, someone who would understand the delicacy of the situation. It was Christmas Eve, well past midnight now, but this couldn't wait. To my surprise, she answered on the 3rd ring. "Jessica, is everything all right?" Her voice was alert, despite the hour, the slight rasp of sleep already fading. "I'm sorry to call so late," I said, "but no, everything is not all right." "What's happened?" "I need to meet with you. Tomorrow, if possible." There was a pause. "It's Christmas Day, Jess." "I know, but this is important. It's about Marcus, the trust, and the Newton house." Another pause, longer this time. "You found something." It wasn't a question. Sarah knew me too well. "Yes," I said, "and I need to know my options." I heard rustling on the other end of the line, the sound of papers being moved. "I can meet you at my home office at 10. Will that work?" "Yes. Thank you, Sarah." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "Just try to get some sleep, okay? Whatever this is, we'll handle it." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of the office, surrounded by papers that told a story of betrayal. Not just tonight's outburst, but a calculated long-term betrayal that had been happening right under my nose. I thought of Marcus as a child, bright, curious, sometimes willful, but always loving. I remembered how he'd help in the bakery after school, flour dusting his hair as he learned to shape dinner rolls. I remembered his graduation from Boston College, the pride in Robert's eyes. I remembered his wedding day, how handsome he'd looked, how hopeful. When had he changed? Or had this darkness always been there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for opportunity? I walked to the window, looking out at the snow still falling over Brookline. The streets were empty, the world hushed in that special way that comes only on Christmas Eve. Somewhere across the city, in the house I had helped them buy, my son was probably sleeping, believing he had won tonight's battle, believing his mother would eventually apologize, make peace, and continue the cycle of giving that had defined our relationship for years. He had no idea what was coming. I returned to the desk and began organizing the documents, making notes about what I'd need to show Sarah in the morning. This wasn't about revenge, or at least not entirely. This was about justice, about consequences, about teaching a lesson that was decades overdue. By the time I finally went to bed, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten with the promise of Christmas morning. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't dreading the holiday. I had a plan now, a purpose. Marcus had wished for me to disappear from his life. I was going to grant that wish, just not in the way he expected. Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty isn't anger, it's action. Sarah Goldstein's home in Chestnut Hill was a stately Victorian, its gabled roof and wraparound porch now covered in a fresh layer of Christmas snow. I parked behind her Volvo and made my way up the shoveled walkway, the folder of documents tucked securely under my arm. Sarah met me at the door, already dressed in a casual sweater and slacks despite the holiday. At 65, she carried herself with the confident precision of someone who had spent 4 decades in courtrooms and boardrooms. Her silver hair was cut in a practical bob, and her eyes, sharp behind tortoiseshell glasses, missed nothing. "You look like hell, Jessica," she said by way of greeting, ushering me inside. "Merry Christmas to you, too," I replied dryly. She led me through to a home office that somehow managed to be both comfortable and intimidatingly professional. Law books lined the walls, interspersed with family photos and artwork. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, modestly decorated with ornaments I recognized from years of holiday parties at the Goldstein home. "David's with the grandkids at Miriam's," she explained, noting my glance toward the tree. "I told him I'd join them after our meeting." She gestured to an armchair across from her desk. "Sit. Tell me what couldn't wait for December 26th. I sat and placed the folder on her desk, organized with the precision that had made Boston Heritage Bakery one of the most successful in the city. "I need to know exactly what rights I have regarding the Newton property, the family trust, and potential legal actions against Marcus." Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look entirely surprised. She'd known our family too long to be easily shocked. "Start at the beginning." So I did. I told her about the Christmas dinner, Marcus's outburst, and my subsequent discovery of the unauthorized withdrawals from the trust. I showed her the documentation I'd gathered, the timeline I'd reconstructed, and the patterns I'd identified. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture I recognized from countless negotiations over bakery contracts. "Well," she said finally, "your son has been busy." "Is it illegal?" I asked directly. "What he's done with the trust. Technically, as a co-trustee, he has authority to make investment decisions. But these withdrawals—" She tapped her pen on the statements I'd printed. "These aren't investments. They're transfers to personal accounts. Without your knowledge or approval, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. And the house—" Sarah reached for the deed, scanning it quickly. "The property is solely in your name. You provided the down payment, and while they've been making mortgage payments, there's no formal agreement transferring ownership. Legally, it's your house, Jessica." A strange calm settled over me. "So I could sell it?" It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "Yes, you could sell it tomorrow if you wanted to. They'd have no legal recourse to stop you." "And if I did—" She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "They'd have to move out once the new owners took possession. But Jessica, this is your son we're talking about. Your grandchild lives in that house." "I'm aware," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And believe me, I've thought about Lily. But Marcus needs to understand that actions have consequences. Words have consequences. Selling their home seems rather extreme for an argument, however ugly." "It's not just the argument," I said firmly. "It's the pattern. The withdrawals from the trust. The way they've treated me since Robert died. The complete lack of respect or gratitude. Last night was simply the final straw." Sarah was silent for a long moment, tapping her pen against the desk. Finally, she sighed. What exactly are you proposing to do? I want to sell the house immediately, today, if possible. On Christmas, Jessica, not to strangers, I clarified. To a holding company that I would establish. Essentially, I would sell it to myself under a different name. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to professional interest. Go on. I also want to remove Marcus as a trustee from the family trust, freeze the accounts he's been accessing, and file a civil suit for financial fraud. A hint of a smile played at the corners of Sarah's mouth. You've been thinking about this since 3 a.m. And the end goal? I met her gaze directly. I want my son to understand that everything he has, the house, the lifestyle, the financial security, exists because of choices I made. Choices to support him, to give generously, to put family first. And if he wants to throw that in my face to wish me gone from his life, then he can experience exactly what that means. Sarah nodded slowly. It's legally doable. The house sale can be arranged quickly, especially to a holding company. The trust amendments will take a bit longer, but we can freeze his access immediately. The civil suit, she hesitated. That's more complicated, and very public. Good, I said firmly. Let it be public. Let everyone see what he's done. Sarah studied me for a long moment. We'd known each other since law school. She'd been in her final year when I was a freshman before I left to marry Robert and start the bakery. She'd seen me at my highest moments and my lowest. She knew I wasn't prone to rash decisions or petty revenge. You understand that this will likely destroy your relationship with Marcus, she said finally. Possibly permanently. I felt a pang of grief, sharp and unexpected. He destroyed it last night, Sarah. I'm just making it official. She nodded, a decision apparently made. All right, I'll draw up the paperwork. The holding company first, then the property transfer. We can have it done before banks close tomorrow. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said, echoing her words from our late-night call. I'm not convinced this is the right move, but it's your decision, and I'll help you execute it properly. As Sarah began outlining the legal steps ahead, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down to see Marcus's name on the screen. Mom, we need to talk about last night. I said some things I didn't mean. Call me when you get this. I showed the message to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. Second thoughts. No, I said, turning the phone face down on the desk. Just more evidence that he thinks an apology text is sufficient to erase what happened. That a few words can undo years of disrespect and months of financial deception. People say things they don't mean when they're angry, Jessica. You know that. Yes, I agreed. But they usually mean them in the moment. And sometimes that moment of truth is all you need to see someone clearly. We spent the next hour going through documents, creating a plan of action that was both legally sound and strategically devastating. By the time I left Sarah's house, the snow had stopped falling and the Christmas sky was a brilliant, deceptive blue. As I drove back to my condo, my phone continued to buzz with messages and missed calls from Marcus. I ignored them all. There would be time for conversations later, after the wheels I'd set in motion had begun to turn. At home, I made myself a proper breakfast: eggs, toast, and coffee, and ate methodically at my kitchen table overlooking the winter-bright streets of Brookline. The normalcy of the act felt strange against the backdrop of what I was about to do, but necessary. Strength requires fuel, and the day ahead would demand all of my resources. After breakfast, I returned to the office and opened my laptop again. This time I logged into my personal banking accounts, the ones Marcus didn't know about or have access to. Accounts I'd maintained separately even during my marriage to Robert, not out of secrecy but from the financial independence that had been ingrained in me by my mother. Always have your own money, she'd told me when I was 16. Even if you never need it. I'd followed that advice throughout my life, setting aside a percentage of the bakery profits in accounts under only my name. Not large amounts, nothing that would have affected our family finances or the business, but steady deposits that had accumulated over decades. Now I began the process of moving additional funds, ensuring that when Marcus inevitably tried to retaliate, he would find no vulnerabilities in my financial position. As I worked, I found myself thinking of Emily, my daughter, who lived in Seattle with her husband and teenage sons. Unlike Marcus, Emily had made her own way, accepting help when truly needed, but never expecting it as a right. We spoke weekly, but I hadn't called her about last night's confrontation. I wasn't ready to involve her in this battle yet. My phone rang again, Victoria this time. I declined the call and continued my preparations. By mid-afternoon, everything was in place. Sarah had texted confirmation that the holding company paperwork was being processed on an expedited basis. The property transfer documents were being drawn up ready for my signature tomorrow morning. The trust access freeze would take effect at midnight. I sat back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the night and morning was fading, leaving room for doubt to creep in. Was I going too far? Would this irreparably damage not just my relationship with Marcus, but with Lily as well? I closed my eyes, remembering the look on my granddaughter's face as I left, confused, frightened, but somehow also understanding. In that way children often are when adults think they're not paying attention. Lily had seen the truth last night, even if she couldn't articulate it. She had witnessed her father's cruelty, her mother's complicity. My phone buzzed again with another text from Marcus' mom. "This is ridiculous. You can't just ignore us. Victoria and I are coming over if you don't call back." The threat galvanized me, washing away the momentary doubt. I texted back, "For the first time, I am not available today. We will speak when I am ready, not before." His reply was immediate. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It was just an argument." "You're overreacting." I didn't respond. Instead, I called Sarah. "They're threatening to come over," I said when she answered. "Do you want me to call them?" she asked, professional mode engaged. "No," I decided. "Let them come. But I want the property transfer ready to sign first thing tomorrow. No delays." "It will be," she assured me. "Jessica, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we file—" "I'm certain," I interrupted. "More certain than I've been about anything since Robert died." After we hung up, I made one more call to Emily in Seattle. I wouldn't tell her everything, not yet, but I needed to hear her voice. Needed the connection to the child who had never made me question my worth as a mother. She answered on the second ring, Christmas chaos audible in the background. "Mom, Merry Christmas. Hold on, let me go somewhere quieter." I listened to the sounds of her moving through her house, away from the noise of her family celebration. Guilt pinched at me. I was interrupting her holiday with my drama. "Sorry about that," she said, her voice clearer now. "The boys got new gaming systems and the volume is out of control. How was dinner at Marcus's last night?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It was illuminating." A pause. "That doesn't sound good. What happened?" "Marcus and I had a disagreement," I said, aiming for understatement. "It got rather heated." "What else is new?" Emily sighed. Let me guess, Victoria was her usual warm, supportive self. Despite everything, I smiled. Emily had never warmed to her sister-in-law, seeing through the polished facade from their first meeting. "Something like that." Emily knew me too well to be fooled by my casual tone. "Mom, what's really going on? You sound different." I took a deep breath. "I'm making some changes, Emily. Legal and financial changes that will affect Marcus and his family. I can't go into details right now, but I wanted you to know that if you hear things from him in the coming days, there's more to the story." "Mom, you're scaring me a little. What did he do?" "Let's just say he made his feelings about my presence in his life very clear," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I'm respecting his wishes in my own way. Should I come out there? I can get a flight tomorrow." "No, sweetheart. Enjoy your Christmas with Michael and the boys. This is something I need to handle myself." We talked for a few more minutes, mostly about her holiday plans and the boys' school achievements. By the time we hung up, I felt stronger. Reminding myself that I had raised at least one child who valued family connections helped reinforce that I wasn't the failure Marcus's words had implied. As the winter afternoon darkened toward evening, I found myself drawn to the kitchen, my sanctuary for most of my life. Without conscious thought, I began pulling ingredients from the cupboards: flour, sugar, butter, vanilla. The motions of measuring and mixing were second nature, a meditation that required no thought, but occupied my hands and calmed my mind. By the time the doorbell rang at 6 o'clock, I had a batch of Robert's favorite shortbread cookies cooling on the counter. The apartment smelled of vanilla and butter, a scent that had always meant home and safety. I straightened my shoulders, wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, and went to answer the door. Marcus stood in the hallway, Victoria slightly behind him. Both were dressed as if for a casual dinner out, Marcus in a gray cashmere sweater, Victoria in a cream turtleneck and camel slacks. Neither looked like they'd slept much. "Finally," Marcus said, his tone somewhere between relief and irritation. "We've been trying to reach you all day." I didn't invite them in immediately. "I was busy." "On Christmas Day?" Victoria asked, her voice artificially light. Doing what? Making decisions, I replied simply. Then I stepped back from the door. You might as well come in, but I don't have much time. They exchanged a glance before entering, moving with the cautious steps of people entering uncertain territory. I led them to the living room, gesturing to the sofa while I took Robert's old armchair. I didn't offer refreshments. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Mom, about last night, I'm selling the house, I interrupted, my voice calm. He blinked, thrown off his prepared script. What? The Newton house, I'm selling it. Victoria let out a small laugh. Don't be ridiculous, Jessica. You can't sell our house. It's not your house, I corrected. The deed is in my name. I provided the down payment. I can sell it, and I am selling it. Marcus's face flushed. This is because of last night, isn't it? One argument and you're threatening to make us homeless? That's insane. It's not a threat, I said evenly. The paperwork is being processed as we speak, and it's not just about last night. It's about the $300,000 you've withdrawn from the family trust over the past year without my knowledge or consent. The color drained from his face. Victoria's eyes widened, darting to her husband. Marcus, what is she talking about? He shook his head, recovering quickly. Mom's confused. I've made some investments using trust funds, but that's perfectly within my rights as a trustee. Transferring money to your personal accounts isn't making investments, I said. It's fraud, and as of midnight tonight, your access to the trust will be revoked. You can't do that, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I already have, I replied. Sarah's handling the paperwork. Sarah, Victoria repeated. Your attorney, Sarah. You've involved lawyers. Yes, I confirmed. Sarah Goldstein is executing all the necessary documents. The house sale will be complete by tomorrow afternoon. Marcus stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm calling Dad's estate attorney. Feel free, I said, remaining seated. But Richard Mitchell retired last year, and his successor will tell you the same thing Sarah has told me. The house is legally mine to sell, and your actions with the trust constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. Victoria's composure was cracking. Where are we supposed to go? It's the middle of winter. Lily has school starting again next week. You have until January 15th to vacate, I said. That should be sufficient time to find a rental. A rental, Marcus exploded. Are you listening to yourself? You're going to force your own granddaughter into a rental property because of an argument. No, I said, finally standing to meet his gaze directly. I'm enforcing consequences for years of disrespect, culminating in your statement that you wish I would disappear from your life. I'm also protecting what remains of the family assets from your unauthorized withdrawals. This is insane, he repeated, running a hand through his hair. You're overreacting completely. And you're underreacting, I replied. You seem to think that wishing your mother would disappear is something you can take back with a half-hearted apology text. It's not. Victoria stepped forward, her socialite training kicking in as she attempted to smooth things over. Jessica, surely we can discuss this reasonably. Marcus spoke in anger. He didn't mean, he meant it. I cut her off. In that moment, he meant every word. And now he gets to experience exactly what life is like without my support. Marcus's expression hardened. So this is punishment. No, I said. This is consequence. There's a difference. We'll fight this, he said, voice rising. We'll get our own lawyers. We'll contest the trust changes, the house sale, everything. You're welcome to try, I replied calmly. But I think you'll find that the legal ground is firmly on my side. And even if it weren't, do you really want to engage in a public legal battle with your mother? How would that look to your clients, Marcus? To your country club friends? Victoria placed a restraining hand on her husband's arm. Let's go, she said quietly. This isn't getting us anywhere. Marcus shrugged her off. I'm not leaving until she agrees to stop this madness. I checked my watch, a deliberate gesture I knew would infuriate him further. I have a call with Sarah in 15 minutes to finalize the holding company structure. You can leave voluntarily, or I can call the building security to escort you out. You wouldn't. Try me, I said, my voice cold. You told me to disappear from your life, Marcus. I'm simply ensuring that all traces of my support disappear as well. The house, the trust access, everything. Victoria tugged at his arm more insistently. Marcus, please, let's go. We can figure this out tomorrow when everyone's calmer. He hesitated, clearly torn between continuing the confrontation and strategic retreat. Finally, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low with barely controlled fury. "Oh, but it is," I replied. "It was over the moment you slammed your hand on that table and told me you wished I weren't there. Some words can't be taken back, Marcus. Some bells can't be unrung." I walked them to the door, maintaining the composed exterior that had served me well through decades of business negotiations. Inside, my heart was racing, but I wouldn't let them see that. Wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing how deeply their betrayal had cut. As they stepped into the hallway, Marcus turned back one last time. "You'll regret this," he said. "When you're old and alone with no family left who cares, you'll regret this day." I met his gaze steadily. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who see me as nothing but a checkbook with a pulse. Then I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. Only when I was certain they were gone did I allow myself to slide down to the floor, arms wrapped around my knees, and finally release the tears I'd been holding back since Christmas dinner. I cried for the son I thought I'd raised, for the grandmother Lily deserved, for the family that should have been. But I didn't cry for my decision, because even through the pain, I knew it was the right one. Marcus had wished me gone. Now he would learn exactly what that meant. I'll continue with part 2 of the story, maintaining the same style and following your outline. The sun rose on December 26th with indifferent brilliance, casting long shadows across my bedroom floor. I'd slept surprisingly well, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes after a decision has been made when uncertainty is replaced by clarity of purpose. My phone showed 7 missed calls, 4 from Marcus, 2 from Victoria, and 1 from Emily. I responded only to Emily with a brief text assuring her I was fine and would call later. The others could wait. I dressed with particular care that morning, selecting a tailored navy pantsuit I usually reserved for business meetings. The message was clear, even if only to myself. Today was not about family drama. It was about business. Sarah was already waiting when I arrived at her office, a cup of coffee on her desk, and a stack of documents arranged in precise order. She'd forgone her usual holiday to be here, a sacrifice I noted but didn't mention. "Everything's ready," she said instead of a greeting, sliding a folder toward me. "Property transfer to KLT Holdings effective immediately upon signature and filing. I've arranged for priority processing. KLT Holdings, Catherine Lynn Thompson. Holdings using my maiden name as a shield. Sarah's idea, and a good one." "And the trust?" I asked, already scanning the first document. "Access codes changed at midnight. Marcus's trustee status is being revoked as we speak." She handed me a pen. "Are you absolutely certain, Jessica? This is your last chance to reconsider." I met her gaze. "Did you ever meet my mother, Sarah?" She shook her head. "She passed before we met, if I recall." Catherine Lynn was a force of nature, raised 3 children alone after my father died when I was 12. I took the pen, weighing it in my hand. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, clothed, and educated. Never complained, never faltered. But she had one rule that she drilled into all of us. Respect is non-negotiable. You either gave it freely or you lost her support. Sounds like a remarkable woman. She was, I agreed. And I've spent too many years forgetting her most important lesson. I signed the first document with the steady hand that had decorated thousands of wedding cakes over the decades. Then the second, and the third. Each signature a deliberate step toward reclaiming the dignity my son had tried to strip away at that Christmas table. Sarah witnessed each signature, then placed the documents in her briefcase. "I'll file these immediately. The property transfer should be recorded by close of business today. The trust paperwork will take a bit longer, but the freeze is already in effect." "Thank you," I said, meaning it, "for everything." "Don't thank me yet," she replied, echoing her caution from yesterday. "The hard part is still ahead. Marcus won't take this lying down." "I'm counting on it," I said, rising to leave. "In fact, I'm betting he's already discovered the trust freeze." Sarah walked me to the door. "Jessica," she said as I was leaving, "be careful. Family disputes can turn ugly faster than you'd expect." "This one already has," I reminded her. "I'm just making sure I'm not the only casualty." When I returned to my car, my phone showed 3 new missed calls from Marcus and a text that simply read, "What have you done to the trust accounts?" All capital letters, the digital equivalent of shouting. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Boston Heritage Bakery, or what had once been Boston Heritage, now operating under the corporate name Sweet Traditions. The storefront looked different with modern signage and a sleek interior visible through the windows, but the bones were the same. This building had been my second home for 40 years. I didn't go in. I wasn't ready to face the changes to see strangers producing variations of my recipes. Instead, I parked across the street and looked at the smaller storefront next door, the original Boston Heritage location that I'd kept when I sold the business. It was currently leased to a bookstore, but the lease would be up in February. My future, perhaps. A fresh start if I decided to take it. My phone rang again, Marcus. This time I answered. "Where are you?" he demanded without preamble. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." "Good morning to you too," I replied calmly. "I'm out running errands." "Don't play games, Mom," he snapped. "What have you done to the trust accounts I can't access anything?" "Exactly what I told you I would do," I said. "Your trustee access has been revoked due to unauthorized withdrawals." "Those weren't unauthorized," he protested. "I'm a co-trustee." "Co-trustees still need mutual agreement for major withdrawals, Marcus. We both know that." "This is insane," he said, echoing his refrain from last night. "First the house, now this. You can't just—" "Yes, I can," I interrupted. "And I have. The house transfer is being recorded as we speak." A pause then. "You're bluffing." "Check the county records this afternoon if you don't believe me," I suggested. "By 4 o'clock, the Newton House will officially belong to KLT Holdings." "What the hell is KLT Holdings?" "Your new landlord," I said simply, "until January 15th, at which point you'll need to have vacated the premises." His breathing became audible through the phone, fast and shallow. "You're really doing this. You're actually throwing your own family out of their home." "No," I corrected. "I'm reclaiming my property from people who have demonstrated they don't value my contribution to their lives." "Over one argument," he nearly shouted. "One moment of anger. This was never about just one argument, Marcus. This is about years of taking without gratitude, years of dismissing my input while accepting my money, years of treating me like an ATM rather than your mother." "That's not true." "It is true." I cut him off. "And the $300,000 you've diverted from the family trust proves it." A long silence followed. When he spoke again, his voice was lower controlled. "Those were legitimate investments." "In what exactly?" Another pause. "Various opportunities, tech startups mainly." "Strange," I remarked. "I don't see any tech stocks or partnership agreements in the trust portfolio. All I see are transfers to your personal accounts." "I can explain all of that," he insisted. "But not over the phone. We need to meet." "We will," I assured him, "with our respective attorneys present." "Attorneys?" His voice rose again. "You're seriously going to force this into legal channels after everything Dad and I did to build your bakery into something worth selling?" The sheer audacity of his claim left me momentarily speechless. Marcus had worked at the bakery during high school, yes, but always reluctantly. And the successful sale 3 years ago had been primarily orchestrated by Sarah and the business broker I'd hired with Marcus, offering opinions from the sidelines. "Your father built Boston Heritage with me," I said finally, my voice cold. "You were a part-time employee at best, and I'm not forcing anything, Marcus. I'm protecting what's legally mine." "Victoria was right about you," he said bitterly. "She always said you'd turn on us someday, that your generosity came with strings attached." "Not strings," I corrected. "Just one expectation: respect. Something both of you seem to find impossible to give." "Fine," he spat. "Have it your way. But don't expect access to Lily when this is over. You've made your choice." The threat was a blade aimed precisely at my heart, but I refused to let him hear the pain it caused. "We'll see what a family court has to say about that. Grandparents do have rights, Marcus, especially financially supportive ones with documentation of verbal abuse from the parents." "Verbal abuse? Are you kidding me?" "I recorded our conversation last night on my phone." I lied smoothly. "Including your charming wish that I would disappear from your lives. I wonder how a judge would view that, particularly in light of the financial irregularities you've been engaged in." It was a bluff I hadn't recorded anything but one I was certain he would believe. Marcus had always found it easier to assume the worst of others' intentions rather than examine his own. "You wouldn't," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Try me," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my financial advisor to discuss restructuring the trust without your involvement." I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding despite the calm I'd projected. Using Lily as leverage was exactly the kind of move I'd expected from Marcus, but the reality of it still stung. I would need to be careful moving forward, strategic in how I handled access to my granddaughter. But first I needed to understand exactly what Marcus had been doing with the trust money. I called David Goldstein, Sarah's husband and our family's longtime financial advisor. "Jessica," he answered warmly. "Sarah mentioned you might be calling. How can I help?" "I need to know where the money went, David," I said without preamble. "The withdrawals Marcus made from the trust over the past year, I need to trace them." "I've already started looking into that," he replied, his tone shifting to professional mode. "And I have to tell you it's concerning. The transfers went to his personal accounts initially, but from there the trail gets murky. Large withdrawals in cash, transfers to offshore accounts, payments to entities I can't immediately identify." "What are you saying, David?" He hesitated. "I'm saying that without a formal audit, I can't tell you exactly where the money went, but the pattern is consistent with someone trying to hide financial activity." "From whom?" "That's the question, isn't it?" He sighed. "It could be from you. It could be from Victoria. It could be from tax authorities. Without more information, I can't say for certain." "I want that audit," I said decisively. "Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. I need to know what my son has been doing with family money." "I'll get it started today," he promised. "But Jessica, be prepared. Whatever we find may not be something you want to know." After I hung up, I sat in my car watching the midday bustle on Beacon Hill. Tourists wandering the historic streets, locals hurrying to post-Christmas sales, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing while my world was being systematically dismantled and rebuilt. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Marcus told me what you've done. How could you do this to Lily? She loves that house, her room, her neighborhood. You're punishing an innocent child for an adult disagreement." I considered ignoring it, but decided a response was warranted. "Lily will always have my love. She can visit my home anytime. This is between the adults, and it's about more than a disagreement. Ask Marcus where the trust money went." Her reply came almost immediately. "What trust money? What are you talking about? Interesting." Either Victoria was an exceptionally good actress, or Marcus had been keeping his financial maneuvers secret from his wife as well. Before I could decide how to respond, another text arrived, this one from Emily. "Mom, Marcus just called me in a panic. Said you're selling his house and cutting off his trust access." "What's going on?" I sighed. Of course Marcus would try to rally his sister to his side. I called Emily instead of texting back. "Mom," she answered immediately. "What's happening? Marcus sounds like he's having a breakdown." "It's complicated, Emmy," I said, using her childhood nickname. "But the short version is that Marcus has been withdrawing large sums from the family trust without authorization, and after his behavior at Christmas dinner, I've decided to enforce some boundaries." "What happened at dinner?" she asked, her voice cautious. I recounted the scene, the argument, his outburst, the words that had set everything in motion. Emily listened without interrupting. "He actually said that," she finally asked. "That he wished you weren't there, that you would disappear from their lives." Those exact words, I confirmed. "In front of Lily and Victoria." She whistled softly. Wow, even for Marcus that's cold." "It was," I agreed, "but it was also clarifying. Sometimes people tell you who they really are if you're willing to listen." "So you're selling the house," she stated. "Their house." "My house," I corrected gently. "The one I bought after selling the bakery. The one with my name on the deed." "That they've been living in for years," she countered. "With Lily." "Yes," I acknowledged. "And they have until January 15th to find other accommodations." A pause. "Mom, that's pretty extreme." "So is telling your mother you wish she would disappear from your life," I pointed out. "Actions have consequences, Emily. Something your brother has managed to avoid learning for 42 years. And the trust, Marcus said you've frozen his access completely. He's been withdrawing money without my knowledge or consent. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, Emmy. David is conducting an audit to trace where it all went." Another pause, longer this time. "Do you think he's in some kind of trouble?" The question hit me like a physical blow, articulating a fear I hadn't allowed myself to fully consider. Was Marcus in financial trouble? Was that why he'd been siphoning money from the trust? "I don't know," I admitted. "But I intend to find out." "What can I do?" Emily asked, her loyalty never in question despite her concerns about my approach. "Just be there if I need you," I said. "This may get uglier before it's resolved." I could fly out, she offered again. Michael could handle the boys for a few days. Not yet, I decided. Let's see how things develop first. After we hung up, I started the car and began driving toward Newton. Not to the house. I wasn't ready for another direct confrontation with Marcus, but to drive by to see it one more time before it officially changed hands. The Newton neighborhood was quiet in the post-Christmas lull streets, still decorated with holiday lights that would remain up until New Year's. The Colonial stood proud and elegant at the end of its circular driveway, tall windows reflecting the winter sun. Robert would have loved this house, its classic lines, its spacious rooms, its dignified presence on the street. I'd bought it for Marcus partly because of that, because it reminded me of the kind of home Robert had always wanted for us, but that we'd never quite managed to afford while building the bakery. The business had consumed our resources for decades, with profits reinvested rather than spent on luxury. We'd lived comfortably in our Brookline condo, but never extravagantly. When I sold the bakery after Robert's death, the windfall had presented an opportunity to provide for Marcus and his family in a way we hadn't been able to earlier. The down payment on this house had been my gift to them, a legacy from Robert channeled through me. And now I was taking it back. A flash of doubt coursed through me. Was I going too far? Was this revenge rather than justice? But then I remembered Marcus's face across that Christmas table, the contempt in his eyes as he told me he wished I would disappear. I remembered the unauthorized withdrawals from the trust. I remembered Victoria's subtle digs about my age, my relevance, my place in their lives. No, this wasn't revenge. This was a necessary correction, a realignment of relationships that had veered dangerously off course. I had just turned to leave when another car pulled into the driveway, a silver Mercedes I recognized as Victoria's. She stepped out, then reached back to help Lily from the rear seat. My granddaughter was bundled in her red winter coat, a matching hat pulled over her dark curls. They hadn't seen me parked halfway down the block. For a moment I considered driving away. Then I made a decision and pulled forward, stopping at the foot of the driveway. Victoria spotted me immediately, her posture stiffening. She said something to Lily, who turned and saw me too. To my surprise, my granddaughter broke away from her mother and ran toward my car. I rolled down the window as she approached. "Grandma," she called. "Are you coming to see us?" "Hello, sweetheart," I said, smiling despite the tension radiating from Victoria, who was now walking briskly toward us. "I was just driving by." "Mom said you're mad at Daddy." Lily said, her directness that of a child who hadn't yet learned to navigate adult evasions. "Because of what he said at dinner." "I'm disappointed in your father," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." Victoria reached us, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "Lily, go inside, please. I need to speak with your grandmother privately." "But Mom..." "Now, please." Lily's shoulders slumped, but she obeyed, casting one last curious glance at me before trudging up the driveway to the house. Victoria waited until the front door closed behind her daughter before turning to face me. Her expression was perfectly composed, her voice controlled. "What are you doing here, Jessica?" "Just passing by," I said. "I wanted to see the house once more." "Before you take it away from us." The veneer of politeness cracked slightly. "Before it changes ownership," I corrected. "And after what Marcus told me this morning about restricting my access to Lily, I'd say the taking is mutual." She flinched. "He shouldn't have said that. It was a knee-jerk reaction to feeling threatened." "Like telling your mother you wish she would disappear," I suggested mildly. Victoria had the grace to look uncomfortable. "He didn't mean it literally." "And yet here we are," I gestured between us. "With literal consequences." She glanced back at the house, then leaned closer to my car window, lowering her voice. "Jessica, this has gone far enough. Marcus made a mistake, several mistakes apparently. But punishing Lily for her father's actions isn't the answer." "I'm not punishing Lily," I replied. "I'm establishing boundaries with adults who have demonstrated they don't respect me. Lily is welcome in my home anytime." "Her home is here," Victoria insisted. "The home you helped us buy." "Helped?" I raised an eyebrow. "Victoria, I paid the entire down payment. My name is on the deed. The help was allowing you to live in my property while building equity through mortgage payments." She straightened her socialite mask, slipping back into place. "I see. So it was never a gift. It was an investment you could reclaim whenever you felt slighted." "It was a gift given with the assumption of basic respect," I corrected. "An assumption that proved incorrect on Christmas night." Victoria glanced toward the house again, a calculating look crossing her face. What if we bought it from you? She suggested. Marcus and I. We could get a mortgage for the full value. I studied her, seeing the desperation beneath the composure. The house has already been sold, Victoria. The transfer is being recorded as we speak. To a holding company you control, she countered, which means you could sell it to us instead. I could, I agreed, but I won't. Why not? Because this isn't about the house, I said simply. It's about consequences. Actions have them. Words have them. Marcus needs to understand that. Her expression hardened. So this is punishment. This is reality, I replied. The reality that existed before I provided financial support, and the reality that exists now that I've withdrawn it. You can't just erase years of family connection over one argument. I'm not erasing anything, I said calmly. I'm responding to what's already been done. And if you're concerned about family connections, perhaps you should ask your husband why he told his mother he wished she would disappear, or why he's been withdrawing money from the family trust without authorization. Victoria's expression flickered. I don't know anything about trust withdrawals. So he said, I nodded, which suggests your husband has been keeping secrets from both of us, something to consider as you plan your next move. Before she could respond, the front door of the house opened and Marcus emerged, heading down the driveway with quick, angry strides. Victoria threw a panicked glance over her shoulder. He doesn't know I'm talking to you, she said hurriedly. He'll be furious. Another thing to consider, I remarked, starting my car engine. Goodbye, Victoria. January 15th. Not a day later. I pulled away from the curb as Marcus reached the bottom of the driveway, his face contorted with anger. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was Victoria placing a restraining hand on his arm as he shouted something after my departing car. The confrontation left me shaken but resolute. Whatever Marcus had been doing with the trust money, it seemed Victoria had been kept in the dark. That added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. I drove back to my condo, mind racing with possibilities. If Victoria truly didn't know about the withdrawals, what did that mean? Was Marcus hiding financial troubles, making investments his wife wouldn't approve of? Or was there something darker at play? Sarah called just as I was parking in my building's garage. It's done, she said without preamble. The property transfer was recorded at 2:30 p.m. The Newton house officially belongs to KLT Holdings. Thank you, Sarah. Don't thank me yet, she cautioned. Marcus showed up at my office an hour ago demanding to see the paperwork. When I refused, he threatened to sue both you and me for fraud and elder manipulation. I laughed despite myself. Elder manipulation, I'm 67, not 97. That's essentially what I told him, she replied. But Jessica, he's not taking this well. He mentioned hiring Stanley Weinberg. Stanley Weinberg, one of Boston's most aggressive divorce attorneys known for scorched earth tactics and astronomical fees. That he specialized in divorces rather than property disputes or trust litigation was telling. Marcus was looking for someone who would inflict maximum damage regardless of expertise. Let him, I said more confidently than I felt. The law is on our side. The law isn't always enough, Sarah warned, especially when someone feels cornered. Be careful, Jessica. Don't go to the Newton house alone. Don't engage with Marcus without witnesses present. I won't, I promised. Has David made any progress with the audit? He's working on it, she said. But these things take time, especially with the holidays. He's hoping to have preliminary findings by next week. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long moment, absorbing the finality of what had happened. The house was no longer Marcus's. The trust was no longer accessible to him. The financial safety net I'd provided for years had been withdrawn. It was done. The consequences were in motion. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't respond. Instead, I went upstairs to my condo and poured myself a glass of the Bordeaux Robert and I had always saved for celebrations. This wasn't exactly a celebration, but it was a milestone the moment I'd reclaimed my power, my dignity, and my future. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. 3 days passed in relative quiet. No calls from Marcus, no texts from Victoria. Sarah reported that Stanley Weinberg had indeed been retained, but no legal filings had yet been made. David was deep into the trust audit, occasionally calling with technical questions about past transactions, but offering no conclusions. The calm before the storm, I suspected. I used the time to strategize my next steps. The reopening of a smaller Boston Heritage bakery had moved from vague idea to concrete plan. I'd contacted the property management company that handled the Charles Street storefront, informing them I wouldn't be renewing the bookstore's lease. I'd started sketching layouts for the new space. Mentally cataloging equipment needs reviewing old recipes that had been customer favorites. Creating something new helped balance the destruction of something old. Emily called daily, offering support and increasingly concern about my well-being. "Mom, are you sure you're okay there alone? I can still come out." "I'm fine, Emmy," I assured her. "Sarah and David are checking in regularly, and I have neighbors who keep an eye out." "I'm worried about Marcus," she admitted. "He's not answering my calls anymore. The one time we did talk, he was different, harder, colder." "He's angry," I said simply, and frightened, though he'd never admit it. His financial safety net is gone, and he doesn't know what's coming next. "Are you going to file the fraud charges Sarah mentioned?" I sighed. "I don't know yet. It depends on what David finds and what Marcus does next." I didn't tell her about the nightmares that had started dreams where Marcus was a child again, reaching for me with small hands, calling for help as he was pulled away by shadowy figures. I'd wake gasping, torn between maternal instinct and the cold determination that had driven my actions since Christmas night. On the fourth day, December 30th, the storm finally broke. I was at the Charles Street property measuring the space and making notes for the renovation when my phone rang with Sarah's number. "Jessica," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "Where are you?" "At the storefront," I replied. "Why, what's happened?" "Marcus and Stanley Weinberg just left my office. They're filing an emergency injunction this afternoon to freeze the property transfer and trust changes." I leaned against the counter, suddenly needing the support. "On what grounds?" "Undue influence, diminished capacity, fraudulent conveyance. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks." She paused. "And Jessica, they're alleging that you've been experiencing cognitive decline since Robert's death, that these decisions aren't consistent with your prior behavior and indicate potential dementia." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's absurd." "Of course it is," Sarah agreed. "But it's a tactic designed to force a psychiatric evaluation and delay proceedings. Standard Weinberg strategy." "I'm not submitting to a psychiatric evaluation," I said firmly. "You may not have a choice if a judge grants the emergency motion," Sarah warned, "which is why I need you to come to my office immediately. We need to prepare a response before they file." I locked up the storefront and drove directly to Chestnut Hill, my hands tight on the steering wheel, anger building with each mile. Using my mental capacity as a legal weapon was a low blow even for Marcus. Sarah was waiting with David when I arrived, her home office transformed into a war room of legal documents and financial reports spread across every surface. "We need to move quickly," she said as soon as I entered. "Weinberg will file at the courthouse before it closes at 5:00. That gives us about 3 hours to prepare our response." "What's our strategy?" I asked, taking the seat she indicated. "Two-pronged," David replied, pushing a file folder toward me. "First, we counter the cognitive decline allegation with current medical records and financial documentation showing consistent rational decision-making. And second," Sarah continued, "we demonstrate that your actions are directly proportional responses to Marcus's behavior, specifically the trust withdrawals and his statements at Christmas dinner." I flipped open the folder to find a preliminary report from David's audit. "You found something?" David nodded grimly. "The withdrawals were just the tip of the iceberg. Marcus has been systematically diverting trust assets for at least 2 years using increasingly sophisticated methods to hide the activity." "How much?" I asked, scanning the figures. "At least $850,000 total," he replied. "Possibly more depending on how we categorize certain transactions." The amount staggered me. "Where did it go?" "Multiple destinations," David said, pointing to a chart. "Some went to high-risk investments that failed spectacularly, cryptocurrency ventures, tech startups that never launched. Some went to an offshore account in the Caymans that we're still trying to trace. And about $200,000 went to a woman named Alexis Durant." "Who is Alexis Durant?" Sarah and David exchanged a glance. "We don't know for certain," Sarah said carefully. "But the payments coincide with Marcus's monthly business trips to New York over the past 1.5 years. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. "You think he's having an affair," I said flatly. "We can't confirm that," David hedged. "The payments could be for legitimate business purposes. Nearly $250,000 worth, I asked skeptically. It's possible, he acknowledged. Unlikely, but possible. Sarah redirected us to the immediate task. Regardless of where the money went, the fact remains that Marcus diverted substantial trust assets without authorization. That alone undermines his claim that your actions are irrational. You're responding to documented financial misconduct. We spent the next 2 hours crafting our response to the emergency motion gathering supporting documentation and preparing declarations from Sarah David and my personal physician, attesting to my mental competence and financial acumen. By 4:30, Sarah's assistant was on her way to the courthouse with our response packet ready to submit it the moment Weinberg filed his motion. Now we wait, Sarah said, pouring 3 cups of much-needed coffee. The judge will either grant an immediate hearing or deny the emergency motion outright. Either way, we should know by tomorrow morning. And if the judge grants the evaluation, I asked. Then you take it, Sarah said simply, and you'll pass with flying colors because there's nothing wrong with your cognitive function. It's an annoyance, but not a serious threat to our position. David's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Victoria, he said, surprised. On my private line. Answer it, I suggested. Put it on speaker. He hesitated, then complied. Victoria, this is David Goldstein. Thank God you answered. Victoria's voice came through tense and strained. I need to speak with Jessica immediately. Is she with you? I'm here, I confirmed. What's going on, Victoria? Marcus doesn't know I'm calling, she said quickly. He's meeting with that awful attorney right now. Jessica, I need to know, is it true about the withdrawals, the money Marcus took from the trust? I glanced at David, who nodded. Yes, it's true. At least $850,000 over the past 2 years. A sharp intake of breath. And a woman named Alexis. We've identified payments to someone by that name, David confirmed carefully. We don't know the nature of the relationship. I do, Victoria said, her voice hardening. She's his investment consultant in New York. At least that's what he told me. I found texts between them 6 months ago, nothing explicit but enough to raise suspicions. Victoria, Sarah interjected, are you aware that Marcus is filing for an emergency injunction this afternoon, alleging that Jessica is experiencing cognitive decline? What? Victoria sounded genuinely shocked. No, he didn't tell me that. He said they were filing something procedural to delay the eviction. This is more than procedural, Sarah explained. It's an attack on Jessica's mental competence designed to invalidate her legal decisions. Silence on the other end. Then, that's why I'm calling. Jessica, I need to meet with you. Alone. There are things you need to know about Marcus's financial situation, things I just discovered myself. When? I asked, already reaching for my purse. Tonight, Victoria said urgently. After Lily's asleep. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on Commonwealth Avenue at 9 Hosiern? I looked to Sarah, who nodded cautiously. I'll be there, I agreed. But Victoria, if this is some kind of setup, it's not, she cut me off. I'm as surprised by all this as you are. More maybe. I have to go. Marcus will be back soon. The line went dead. The 3 of us sat in silence for a moment, processing this unexpected development. It could be a trap, David pointed out. A way to get you alone, potentially, to gather evidence for their cognitive decline claim. Or Victoria has realized her husband has been lying to her too, Sarah suggested. And she's looking out for herself now. Only one way to find out, I said, standing. I'll meet her. Not alone, Sarah insisted. I'll sit at another table, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give you privacy. I nodded, grateful for the support. Let's see what Marcus's wife has to say when she's not following his script. The Starbucks on Commonwealth Avenue was nearly empty at 9:00 p.m. Most patrons already home preparing for New Year's Eve celebrations the following night. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a table in the back corner with a clear view of the entrance. Sarah positioned herself near the front, pretending to work on her laptop while maintaining line of sight to my location. Victoria arrived precisely at 9:00, her usual polished appearance noticeably diminished. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, her clothing casual jeans and a sweater rather than her typical designer ensembles. She spotted me immediately and made her way to the table, sliding into the chair across from me without ordering a drink. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice low and tense. I don't have much time. Marcus thinks I'm at a late yoga class. What's going on, Victoria? I asked directly. Why the secret meeting? She glanced around, then leaned forward. Marcus is in financial trouble, serious trouble, the kind that doesn't just go away. The trust withdrawals. That's part of it, she confirmed. But there's more, much more. She pulled a folded paper from her purse and slid it across the table. I found this in his home office this afternoon when he was meeting with Weinberg. I unfolded the document to find a letter from the Securities and Exchange Commission dated 3 weeks earlier, informing Marcus Thompson that he was under investigation for potential securities fraud related to client investments. My God, I breathed, scanning the details. Has he been using client funds improperly? Victoria nodded miserably. From what I can piece together, yes. He's been promising investors access to exclusive opportunities, taking their money, but not actually making all the investments he claimed. Some of it he diverted to cover losses elsewhere. Some of it went to personal expenses. Alexis Durant, I suggested. Her mouth tightened. Among others. There's been more than one. I studied Victoria's face, searching for signs of deception but finding only exhaustion and fear. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because I have to protect Lily, she said simply. And myself. I had no idea about any of this until yesterday when I found that letter. I started digging checking accounts I normally leave to Marcus, finding credit card statements he's apparently been hiding. She ran a shaking hand through her hair. We're not just losing the house, Jessica. We're losing everything. Marcus's career is over. He'll likely face criminal charges. And her voice broke slightly. I have to decide what to do next. Does he know that you know? I asked. She shook her head. I've been very careful, but I can't keep pretending much longer, especially now that he's filing legal motions claiming you're cognitively impaired. That's not just wrong, it's cruel. What do you want from me, Victoria? I asked directly. Why this meeting? She looked me straight in the eye. I want to make a deal. I'll testify about Marcus's financial misconduct, confirm your complete mental competence, and support your claims regarding his behavior at Christmas dinner. In exchange, I want your help establishing a new life for Lily and me separate from Marcus. You're leaving him, I stated rather than asked. As soon as I can do it safely, she confirmed. But I need resources, and with all our assets potentially frozen or seized when the SEC investigation becomes public. I sat back considering the proposal and the woman making it. Victoria and I had never been close, our relationship defined more by polite tolerance than genuine affection. But looking at her now, stripped of her usual armor of perfection, genuinely frightened for her future and her daughters. I saw something I recognized, a mother fighting for her child's security, something I understood all too well. What exactly are you asking for? I inquired. A loan, she said promptly. Enough to secure an apartment, cover living expenses for 6 months, and retain a good divorce attorney. I'll pay back every penny once I'm on my feet again. You could stay in the Newton house, I pointed out. KLT Holdings could evict Marcus, but allow you and Lily to remain until the divorce is finalized. She shook her head firmly. That house is tainted now. Too many secrets, too many lies. Lily and I need a fresh start somewhere else. I studied her for a long moment, weighing sincerity against potential manipulation. Why should I trust you, Victoria? After years of cold politeness at best, outright condescension at worst. She didn't flinch from the question. You shouldn't trust me based on our past. Trust me based on my actions now. I'm here betraying my husband's confidence because what he's doing is wrong. Because Lily deserves better than a father who steals and lies. And because... She hesitated, then continued with visible effort. Because I was wrong about you. I always thought your generosity was about control. But I'm starting to see it was actually about love. Love that Marcus and I took for granted. The admission clearly cost her pride, yielding to desperation and perhaps a flicker of genuine remorse. I made my decision. I'll help you, I said, but not with a loan, with a job. She blinked, confused. A job? At Boston Heritage Bakery, I explained. I'm reopening in February. Smaller scale specialty focus. I'll need a business manager, someone organized, detail-oriented with experience handling accounts and client relations. Skills I suspect you have in abundance from your interior design work. Victoria stared at me, clearly caught off guard by the offer. You want me to work for you? After everything, with me, I corrected. As a partner eventually if things work out. It would give you income structure and a way to support Lily independently. Why would you do this? She asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Because unlike your husband, I said simply, I believe in consequences, not punishment. Marcus chose his path. You're choosing a different one. I respect that distinction. She was silent for a long moment, visibly processing the unexpected turn. I don't know the first thing about baking, she finally said. I smiled slightly. You don't need to. I'll handle the baking. You'll handle the business side. We'll both focus on making it successful. And Lily will always have a place in my life, I assured her, regardless of what happens with Marcus. Victoria took a deep breath, then nodded once decisively. I accept, on one condition, which is, you don't tell Marcus I came to you, not yet. I need time to secure Lily's and my position before he knows I've switched sides. Agreed, I said. But Victoria, be careful. If Marcus is facing the kind of legal trouble this letter suggests, he may become desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices. I know, she said quietly. That's why I need to move quickly. She stood gathering her purse. I should go. He'll be expecting me home soon. Wait, I said, reaching for my own purse. Take this. I wrote a check for $10,000 and handed it to her. Emergency money, in case you need to leave suddenly. Find a hotel, hire security, whatever you need to stay safe. She stared at the check, then at me. Thank you, she whispered carefully, folding it and tucking it away. I'll call you tomorrow with what I find out about Weinberg's filing. After Victoria left, Sarah joined me at the table, her expression questioning. Well, was it a trap? No, I replied, showing her the SEC letter Victoria had provided. It was a lifeline for both of us. As Sarah read the letter, her eyes widened. This changes everything. The trust withdraws, the house, even Christmas dinner. It all takes on new significance in light of this investigation. He was drowning, I realized aloud. Financially, professionally. The trust withdrawals were a desperate attempt to cover losses elsewhere. And when I started asking questions, he lashed out, Sarah finished for me. Telling you to disappear was about silencing a potential witness as much as expressing genuine resentment. Not entirely, I disagreed. The resentment was real, but the timing of the outburst, the intensity that was fear-talking, fear that I was getting too close to his secrets. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. This gives us powerful leverage. The judge will be very interested to see this SEC letter when considering Weinberg's emergency motion. No, I said firmly. We don't use it. Not yet. Victoria provided it in confidence, and revealing it now could put her and Lily at risk. Jessica, Sarah protested, this is exactly the kind of evidence that would shut down Marcus's claims immediately. And we'll use it if absolutely necessary, I conceded. But only as a last resort. Victoria is taking a huge risk by coming to me. I won't betray that trust. Sarah sighed but nodded agreement. All right, we proceed as planned with our response to the emergency motion. But keep that letter safe, we may need it sooner than you think. As we left the coffee shop, I felt an odd sense of calm settling over me. The confrontation I'd been anticipating wasn't with Marcus directly, but with the truth about what he'd become. And now that I knew, I could plan my next moves with greater precision. This wasn't just about a son's cruel words to his mother anymore. It was about justice in a much broader sense for the trust beneficiaries whose funds had been misused, for Victoria and Lily, who had been deceived, and yes, for me as well. Marcus had wished me gone from his life. Soon enough, he might wish I had stayed to help him face what was coming. New Year's Eve dawned cold and bright, Boston's skyline crisp against a cloudless blue sky. I woke early, anticipating Sarah's call about Weinberg's emergency motion, but my phone remained silent through breakfast and into mid-morning. Finally, at 11:30, Sarah's name appeared on my screen. The judge denied the motion, she said without preamble. Completely rejected Weinberg's arguments about cognitive decline and ordered both parties to mediation before any further filings. Relief washed through me. That's good news. It's excellent news, Sarah agreed. Judge Peterson saw right through the delay tactics. The eviction stands for January 15th, and the trust changes remain in effect. Has Marcus been notified yet? Weinberg received the ruling about 30 minutes ago, she confirmed. I expect Marcus knows by now. As if on cue, my call waiting beeped with Marcus's number. He's calling me right now, I told Sarah. Don't answer, she advised quickly. Let it go to voicemail. Anything you say could be recorded and used against you later. I need to know what he's thinking, I argued. His next move, Sarah hesitated. If you must speak with him, keep it brief. Admit nothing, promise nothing, and for God's sake don't mention Victoria or the SEC letter. I won't do, I promised, then clicked over. Hello, Marcus. The judge denied the motion, he said immediately, his voice tight with controlled fury. Your attorney is probably gloating right now. Sarah doesn't gloat, I replied calmly. She simply does her job effectively. This isn't over, he warned. Not even close. Weinberg is preparing a full lawsuit, elder abuse, undue influence, fiduciary breach. We're going to tie this up in court for years if necessary. On what grounds? I asked, genuinely curious about what justification he could possibly claim. On the grounds that you're vindictively punishing your son over a minor disagreement, he snapped. That you're using your financial power to control and manipulate your family. Is that how you see it? I asked quietly. That wishing your mother would disappear from your life is a minor disagreement. I was angry, he nearly shouted. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. You know that. What about the trust withdrawals? I pressed. Were those also things you didn't mean? He went silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more controlled. You have no idea what pressures I've been under, what I've been trying to manage. Then explain it to me, I suggested. Help me understand why my son would steal from the family trust rather than simply asking for help. Another pause longer this time. I can't, he finally said. Not over the phone. We need to meet in person, just you and me. Warning bells rang in my mind. After Victoria's revelations last night, the idea of meeting Marcus alone seemed not just unwise, but potentially dangerous. That's not possible, I said firmly. Any discussions between us need to happen with our attorneys present. For God's sake, Mom, he exploded. I'm your son. We don't need lawyers to have a conversation. Apparently we do, I countered. Since you've hired one of the most aggressive attorneys in Boston to claim I'm experiencing cognitive decline. His breathing was audible through the phone, fast and shallow. Fine, have it your way. But remember this moment, Mom. Remember that when I offered to explain to try to fix things, you chose lawyers and litigation instead of family. No, Marcus, I said, my voice hardening. You chose this path the moment you decided to help yourself to trust funds without authorization. You chose it again when you told me you wished I would disappear. I'm simply responding to choices you already made. This isn't about the money, he insisted. If you'd just listen. It is about the money, I interrupted. At least partially, but it's also about respect boundaries and consequences, concepts you seem to have trouble grasping. You have no idea what's really going on, he said, his voice dropping to something close to a whisper. No idea what's at stake. Then enlighten me, I challenged, with our attorneys present. Full disclosure, full transparency. He laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. It's too late for that. It's never too late for the truth, Marcus. Some truths come with prices too high to pay, he replied cryptically. You should remember that when you're feeling righteous about all this. The line went dead. I sat holding the silent phone, trying to parse what he'd meant. The conversation had only deepened my concerns. Marcus was clearly under immense pressure, potentially dangerous pressure given the SEC investigation. And now he was being cornered on multiple fronts by the securities investigation, by the loss of the house, by the trust restrictions, and possibly by whatever Victoria might be planning. A desperate man indeed. And desperate men rarely make rational choices. I called Sarah back immediately to report the conversation. He wanted to meet alone, I explained. Insisted it wasn't about the money, that I don't understand what's really going on or what's at stake. Classic manipulation, Sarah observed. Creating mystery to draw you in, suggesting he has information you need. I'm glad you refused to meet. He sounded different, I said, struggling to articulate the change I'd heard. Less angry than before, more. Resigned, maybe almost fatalistic. That concerns me, Sarah admitted, especially in light of what Victoria shared last night. A man facing both financial ruin and potential criminal charges who now feels he has nothing left to lose. She didn't need to finish the thought. We both understood the potential dangers. Should I warn Victoria? I asked. She's still in that house with him. Yes, Sarah decided. But cautiously. Tell her to be vigilant, but don't suggest we're concerned he might become violent unless she's raised that possibility herself. We don't want to create panic without cause. I agreed to call Victoria later once I was sure Marcus wouldn't be home. In the meantime, I had my own preparations to make. The meeting with the commercial property manager for the Charles Street storefront was scheduled for 2:00 p.m., the first official step toward reopening Boston Heritage Bakery. Life continuing plans advancing even as the family crisis unfolded. There was something empowering about that juxtaposition, the ability to build while weathering destruction. The property meeting went smoothly, the transition from bookstore to bakery approved with minimal complications. I signed the necessary paperwork, wrote the first check for the renovation fund, and walked out with keys to my future in hand. As I exited the building onto Charles Street, my phone rang with Victoria's number. "Jessica," she said without greeting, her voice strained. "We have a problem. Marcus received the court ruling this morning, and he's been erratic. Packing boxes, making calls, drinking since noon. He just left with a suitcase saying he had business to take care of." "Did he say what business or where he was going?" I asked, immediately concerned. "No," she replied. "But he took his passport from the safe, and Jessica, he emptied our joint checking account before he left. Every penny." My concern deepened to alarm. "Where are you now? Is Lily with you?" "We're at my mother's in Cambridge," she assured me. "I told Marcus I was taking her shopping for New Year's Eve. I packed emergency bags for both of us before we left." "Good thinking," I said. "Stay there for now. Has Marcus called you since he left?" "No, but I've been monitoring the home security cameras through the app on my phone. He came back once, loaded more boxes into his car, then left again about 20 minutes ago." "Victoria, I think you should call the police," I suggested carefully. "Report the missing funds at minimum. And tell them what?" she asked, frustration evident. "That my husband withdrew money from our joint account. That's not illegal, Jessica." "No, but if he's planning to flee the country..." She was silent for a moment. "You really think he would just abandon us?" The hurt in her voice was palpable. Not the sophisticated socialite now, but a wife facing the ultimate betrayal. "I don't know," I admitted. "But the passport, the emptied account, the suitcases, it doesn't look good." "What should I do?" she asked, vulnerability replacing her usual self-assurance. "Stay with your mother tonight," I advised. "Use some of the money I gave you to retain a divorce attorney first thing tomorrow morning. And Victoria, don't tell anyone where you are, not friends, not Marcus's colleagues, no one who might inadvertently alert him." "I won't," she promised. "But Jessica, if he's really running, what about the house? All our things. Lily's school records, her favorite toys." "Let me handle that," I said decisively. "I'll have Sarah file an emergency order to secure the property and its contents. As the legal owner through KLT Holdings, I can authorize removal and storage of personal items." "You'd do that for us." The surprise in her voice was almost painful to hear. "Of course," I said. "Lily is my granddaughter. And you're..." I hesitated, not quite ready to claim her as family after years of mutual wariness. "You're her mother." "Thank you," she said quietly. "I should go. Lily's getting anxious and my mother is asking too many questions. Call me if you hear from Marcus," I instructed. "Day or night." After hanging up, I immediately called Sarah to report this new development and request the emergency property order. She promised to file it within the hour. "Jessica," she said before ending the call, "this changes the security calculation. If Marcus is indeed planning to flee, he may become unpredictable. I'm sending my nephew, he works for a private security firm, to keep an eye on your building tonight. No arguments." I didn't argue. The stakes had risen beyond wounded pride or family discord. This was now about potential flight from justice, abandoned responsibilities, and the welfare of a child caught in the crossfire. By the time I returned to my condo, New Year's Eve celebrations were beginning across the city. Festive gatherings visible through windows, people hurrying along sidewalks, dressed for parties, the anticipatory energy of a year ending and another beginning. I had just poured a glass of wine when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young man in a dark suit, professional and alert. "Mrs. Thompson," he asked when I opened the door. "I'm Michael Goldstein, Sarah's nephew. She asked me to check in with you." I invited him in, noting the subtle earpiece he wore and the careful way he scanned the apartment as he entered. "Sarah mentioned she was sending security. That seems excessive." "Better safe than sorry, ma'am," he replied, not quite agreeing, but not dismissing my concern either. "I'll be in the lobby and making regular perimeter checks until morning. My colleague will take over then." "You really believe Marcus might come here?" I asked, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. We have to consider all possibilities, he said diplomatically. People under extreme stress sometimes make unpredictable choices. After he left to take up his post in the lobby, I stood at my living room window looking out at the city preparing to celebrate. Somewhere out there, Marcus was making choices that would define the rest of his life, and by extension the lives of everyone connected to him. I thought about calling Emily again, but decided against it. She'd be celebrating with her family in Seattle, and there was nothing she could do from across the country. Better to let her enjoy the evening and deal with the family crisis tomorrow. As midnight approached, I remained by the window, wine glass in hand, watching fireworks begin to illuminate the sky over Boston Harbor. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. Some debts can't be paid with money. Happy New Year, Mom. I stared at the screen, a chill running through me despite the warmth of the apartment. The message could only be from Marcus, presumably using a burner phone since I would have recognized his regular number. I forwarded the text to both Sarah and Michael Goldstein, adding, "Just received this." Definitely from Marcus. Michael responded immediately. Received. Increasing security protocols. Please remain in your apartment with doors locked. Sarah's reply came moments later, saved as evidence. This could be construed as a threat. Consider filing a police report in the morning. I set the phone down unsettled but resolute. Whatever Marcus was planning, whatever debts he referenced, I would face it head on. I had spent too many years accommodating his demands, overlooking his flaws, making excuses for his behavior. That time was over. The new year arrived with a cacophony of fireworks and distant cheers. I raised my glass to the empty room. To consequences, I said aloud, and to new beginnings. Little did I know how prophetic that toast would prove to be. I understand. I'll complete part 3 with approximately 2,000 words total. January dawned with a crystalline clarity, Boston's skyline etched against a winter blue sky. The first day of a new year, and for me the first day of a new life. Marcus hadn't returned to the Newton house. The security cameras Victoria monitored showed no activity since his departure on New Year's Eve. His threatening text remained the last communication hanging in the air like an undetonated explosive. Sarah had filed a police report about the message, but the officers had been non-committal. A vague text, they explained, didn't constitute an actionable threat. They would include it in their records, but without more specific language or additional threatening communications, there wasn't much they could do. At least we've documented it, Sarah said when I called to check on progress. That creates a paper trail if anything else happens. Security remained in place at my building. Michael Goldstein or one of his colleagues discreetly present in the lobby, making regular perimeter checks. Sarah had insisted on continuing the protection at least until we had confirmation of Marcus's whereabouts. Victoria and Lily had not returned to the Newton house either. They remained at Victoria's mother's home in Cambridge, a temporary arrangement that was already showing signs of strain. My mother means well, Victoria explained during our morning call, but she keeps asking questions I'm not ready to answer. And she's never approved of Marcus, so there's a constant undercurrent of "I told you so" that isn't helping. What have you told Lily? I asked, concerned about my granddaughter's understanding of the situation. Just that Daddy had to go away on business for a while. Victoria said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. She keeps asking when we're going home. I don't know what to tell her. Would you like to stay at my place? I offered impulsively. There's plenty of room and it would give you some breathing space to plan your next steps. The pause that followed was laden with unspoken history, years of polite distance, subtle competitions, and mutual wariness. That's very generous, Victoria said finally. But are you sure after everything? I'm sure, I replied. Lily is my granddaughter. And you? I hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. You're making difficult choices to protect her. I respect that. That afternoon, Victoria and Lily arrived with hastily packed suitcases. Michael helped carry their belongings upstairs while Lily rushed into my arms. Mom says we're staying with you for a sleepover. That's right, sweetheart, I confirmed, holding her close. For as long as you need. Later, after Lily was settled in the guest room, Victoria and I sat in the kitchen with tea. David called this morning with updates on the audit, I told her. It's worse than we thought. I shared what I'd learned, the cash withdrawals, the financial difficulties, the payments to a forensic accountant. Victoria listened, her expression shifting from concern to resignation. I suspected something like this, she admitted. There were signs I ignored or rationalized away. Late bill payments he blamed on accounting errors. Cash advances on credit cards explained as temporary cash flow issues. I wanted to believe we were successful. I didn't want to look too closely at the cracks in the facade. We all have blind spots where family is concerned, I said. The question now is how to move forward. I hired a divorce attorney yesterday, she told me, and I've contacted Lily's school about flexible attendance while we deal with this situation. As we talked, I found myself reassessing Victoria. Without Marcus's influence, I saw a different woman emerging, resourceful, pragmatic, and fiercely protective of her daughter. About your job offer, she said, changing the subject. Is that still open? Absolutely, I confirmed. In fact, I signed the lease papers for the Charles Street storefront yesterday. Renovations begin next week. I'd like to see it, she said, surprising me. If I'm going to help with the business side, I should understand what we're working with. Our conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. A security-cleared package had arrived, a medium-sized box with no return address. Just my name printed in block letters. Inside was a smaller box wrapped in tissue paper, and on top a handwritten note, Mom. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not just from Boston, but from the country. Don't bother looking, you won't find me. You were right about one thing, actions have consequences. Mine caught up with me faster than I expected. The SEC investigation was just the beginning. There are other parties looking for me who aren't as bound by legal niceties. I've made choices I can't undo, taken risks that didn't pay off, borrowed from people who don't forgive debts. But I never expected my own mother to turn against me when I needed her most. The enclosed is something you might want. Consider it a parting gift, the last thing you'll ever receive from the son you discarded so easily. Marcus, my hands trembled as I unwrapped the tissue paper, revealing Robert's heirloom watch case. The watch itself was missing. Instead, there was a small voice recorder. With growing dread, I pressed play. Robert's voice filled the room, recorded during his final days. Marcus, I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. Your mother and I couldn't have asked for a better son. The bakery business wasn't your path, but you've built something impressive on your own terms. That takes courage, son. When you receive this watch on your 50th birthday, remember that time is the one thing we can't make more of. Use yours wisely, surrounded by people who truly matter. I love you, son. Take care of your mother when I'm gone. She's stronger than she looks, but she'll need you more than she'll admit. Victoria had entered the room and stood listening. When the recording ended, tears streaked her face. He sent this to hurt you, she whispered, to twist the knife one last time. Yes, I agreed, my own eyes burning. But it's also a reminder of what Marcus could have been, what Robert believed he was. I closed the empty watch case gently. Robert never saw the side of Marcus that we've discovered. He died believing his son was the man he raised him to be, honorable, responsible, kind. Maybe that's a gift, Victoria suggested softly, that he never knew the truth. Through the open door of the guest room, I could see Lily playing with the toys I'd found for her. In her dark curls and focused expression, I saw echoes of Robert, of myself, of the family heritage that would continue through her regardless of her father's choices. What now? Victoria asked. I straightened my shoulders. Now we rebuild. The bakery, our lives, our family, what remains of it. Without Marcus, she stated. Without Marcus, I confirmed. But not without hope. The Charles Street storefront came alive under our combined vision. Victoria's business acumen proved invaluable as we navigated permits, contractor negotiations, and vendor relationships. My expertise in baking and customer service complemented her skills perfectly. Emily arrived from Seattle to help, taking leave from her job to spend a month with us. The three of us formed an unexpected alliance, each bringing different strengths to the project. I never thought I'd see you two working together, Emily remarked one evening as Victoria and I reviewed kitchen equipment quotes at my dining table, let alone actually getting along. Circumstances change people, Victoria replied with a small smile, or perhaps just reveal who they really are. Meanwhile, the story of Marcus's financial misconduct had indeed broken in the press. The headlines were predictably sensational. Boston financial manager flees amid fraud allegations, and Thompson investment scandal, how deep does it go? As Sarah had predicted, we received numerous media requests. We declined most, but accepted one interview with the Boston Globe to announce the bakery's reopening. The resulting article, Boston Heritage Bakery Returns a Family Legacy Continues, helped shift the narrative toward renewal rather than scandal. Lily adjusted to her new reality with the resilience of childhood. She missed her father, but thrived under the combined attention of her mother, grandmother, and aunt. We enrolled her in a new school where the Thompson name carried no baggage, and she quickly made friends. The most difficult moment came when Victoria finally had to explain that her father wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. "Is it because he doesn't love us anymore?" Lily had asked, her small face crumpled with the impossible weight of abandonment. "No, sweetheart," Victoria had answered, gathering her daughter close. "It's because Daddy made some mistakes and had to go away to deal with them. It's not about you. It was never about you." Later, Victoria had cried in my arms, a boundary I never thought we'd cross. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her father chose himself over her? "Over all of us, you don't," I'd replied simply. "You just keep showing her that the people who remained chose her, every day, in every way possible." By April, Boston Heritage Bakery was ready for its grand reopening. The space had been transformed, warm cream walls, polished wooden counters, gleaming display cases, and a small but state-of-the-art kitchen. We'd rehired 2 bakers from the original bakery and added a pastry chef specializing in modern techniques. Opening day exceeded all expectations. A line formed before dawn, loyal customers from the original bakery mingling with curious newcomers. Local news covered the event, capturing the moment when I cut the ribbon with Lily by my side. "Why isn't Daddy here for the special day?" Lily had asked innocently that morning. Victoria and I had exchanged glances, but Emily stepped in smoothly. "Because this is a different kind of special day, sweetie. This is Grandma's and your mom's special day. Sometimes special days are for different people." The simple explanation had satisfied her, at least temporarily. As spring turned to summer, the bakery established itself as a neighborhood fixture once again. I focused on training the staff and maintaining quality standards while Victoria handled marketing and finances. We developed a natural rhythm, our former tension replaced by mutual respect. In July, we received official confirmation of what we'd already suspected: Marcus had fled to a country without an extradition treaty with the United States. The SEC investigation had concluded, resulting in multiple charges that would be waiting if he ever returned. The FBI had added his case to their financial crimes division, but classified it as low priority given the lack of violence and the challenges of international jurisdiction. "So that's it," Victoria said when I shared the news. "He's just gone." "From our daily lives, yes," I acknowledged, "but never completely from Lily's heart, or yours." "Or yours," she added softly. I nodded, accepting this truth. "Or mine, but we move forward anyway." And move forward we did. Victoria filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment, a process complicated by Marcus's absence, but ultimately successful. Emily returned to Seattle, but visited frequently, maintaining the stronger connection we'd forged during the crisis. The Newton house was sold, the proceeds held in trust for Lily's future after Victoria's divorce settlement was finalized. We found a comfortable 3-bedroom apartment near the bakery where Victoria and Lily could establish their new home while still being close enough for daily interaction. Life developed new patterns, new traditions, new joys to replace what had been lost. The deep wound of Marcus's betrayal gradually scarred over, not forgotten, but no longer bleeding. Almost a year had passed since that fateful Christmas dinner when Boston Heritage Bakery prepared for its first holiday season. The shop gleamed with tasteful decorations, display cases filled with seasonal specialties, gingerbread Yule logs, Christmas cookies in the shapes that had delighted generations of customers. Victoria had proven to be not just a capable business partner, but a creative one, introducing ideas that refreshed traditions while respecting their history. Under our joint leadership, the bakery had quickly become profitable, its reputation for quality and innovation growing steadily. Lily, now 9, had her own small apron and often helped with simple tasks after school, her dark curls tucked under a baker's cap that matched mine. "Just like you used to help in the original bakery," Victoria remarked, watching us decorate cookies together. "The family legacy continues." I agreed, feeling a bittersweet pride in this unexpected continuation of tradition. On Christmas Eve, we closed the bakery early and returned to my apartment, now our shared home, as Victoria and Lily had decided to stay rather than move to the separate apartment we'd planned. The arrangement had evolved naturally as we recognized the benefits of our unconventional family structure. Emily and her husband had flown in from Seattle with their teenage sons, filling the apartment with the cheerful chaos of family. We gathered around the table that evening, a marked contrast to the previous Christmas. "I'd like to say something," Victoria announced as we finished dinner. "A year ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought I understood success. I was wrong about both." She raised her glass. "To second chances and to the strongest woman I've ever known, Jessica, thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." "To family," Emily added, raising her own glass. "The one we choose every day." "To Boston heritage," I contributed. "Past, present, and future." Lily allowed a tiny sip of sparkling cider for the toast, raised her glass with solemn importance. "To Grandma's cookies being the best in the whole world." Laughter rippled around the table, genuine warm healing. Later, after the others had retired, I stood at my living room window, looking out at Boston's twinkling holiday lights. The year had brought loss and betrayal, but also unexpected gifts, a stronger relationship with my daughter, a genuine connection with Victoria, a thriving business reborn, and most precious of all, Lily's continued presence in my life. Marcus had wished me gone from his life that Christmas night. Instead, he had removed himself from ours. The consequences of his choice had rippled outward, reshaping all our lives in ways none of us could have predicted. I touched the empty watch case that sat on my mantel, a reminder of what was lost, but also of what remained, the truth of who we are, revealed not in moments of ease, but in how we respond when tested. "Merry Christmas, Robert," I whispered to the quiet room. "I think you'd be proud of the family we've become." Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent, covering the city in a clean blanket of white. A fresh start. A new year ahead. A family rebuilt not on obligation or appearance, but on choice and truth. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another.